Members of the UK Armed Forces have been vocal in British media about how they wanted the country to vote for Brexit. It may have some bearing should a British government try to overturn the will of the people. Some veterans, though, are campaigning for people in Britain not to join the army. It's an issue that could well rise to prominence next Wednesday when the Chilcot inquiry into Iraq reports on the Blairite war that displaced, killed or wounded millions. With me is former SAS soldier who served in Iraq and Afghanistan and founder of Veterans for Peace, Ben Griffin. Ben, thanks so much for coming back on the show. First of all, on the armed forces, it really relates to bigger geopolitical issues regarding Brexit and whether Washington will tell our parliament that Brexit's impossible. Could the army be involved?
Well, I think we should look at the vote of the army as actually a wider working class vote. If you look at the areas that the army's recruited from, they're from the areas that voted to leave the EU. So I think there's a consistency there. I don't think it's a special military vote there. I think they're actually voting with the communities that they're from. In terms of them getting involved in any sort of I don't know, revolts against the possible overturn of Brexit, I'm not sure if that's possible or likely. You know, the British Army will do what it's told.
Well, let's get to the class issue then and your campaign. Tell me about the Don't Join the Army campaign.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the Don't Join the Army campaign is actually a response to an official British Army recruitment campaign, which was also called Don't Join the Army. And their sort of sublines were don't join the army, don't make new friends, you know, don't travel abroad.
Sarcasm.
Well, kind of...
Irony.
Yeah, or maybe a kind of reverse psychology almost, you know. And we've been looking into how to challenge recruitment in this country for a long time, and we saw this as an ideal opportunity to create both a website and written material to challenge the recruitment of young people in this country into the army. And what we've got to remember is that the military is involved, or the British Army specifically involved, in a long-term campaign. And that campaign is to recruit 16-year-olds into the army to serve in frontline units, but two, is to capture the imagination of our whole society. So our campaign is, which is called Don't Join the Army, is aimed not only at young people who are subject to this propaganda to join, but also aimed at the whole of society to say, look, we have surveyed and talked to hundreds of veterans and asked them about the negative experiences they've had in the military. And this website and this written material is a result of that survey of hundreds of veterans.
OK, but hang on, though. It's a spectacular website, I've got to say. One of the first things is say sexual harassment. Surely sexual harassment is not more prevalent in the army than it is in other workplaces.
Unfortunately, sexual harassment is rife in the British Army. I've read studies that show, and these are official British military studies, that show that women are twice as likely to be harassed in the army as they are in civilian jobs. All of the female veterans we have in Veterans for Peace have experienced sexual harassment, from name-calling and sort of, you know, verbal harassment up to actual assault.
OK, that may be arguably worse. What about education? Because the army is very big on giving education from working-class communities.
Unfortunately, the army is terrible at providing education. One of their key educational facilities, if you could call it that, is the Apprentices College, at Harrogate. And they say about how they provide an education to those who sign up. Now, they're taking young people at 16 out of full-time education into the army.
And they get entry-level 3 in English and Maths.
On the promise that they're going to be educated.
What's wrong with entry-level 3?
Unfortunately, they don't get educated in there. Most of the training is based around becoming a soldier. Entry-level 3, I think, means that you'll have the reading age of an 11-year-old, which is good enough to be an infantry soldier, but not good enough for any other job in society. Well,
you were in one of the parachute regiments. You say also that they teach army recruits in Britain to hate not only civilians and foreigners, but other armed services.
Sure. It's part of the way that they build a very strong loyalty within a group, but also to make it easier for you to carry out offensive operations against other people. So, for example, in the parachute regiment when I joined, we were encouraged to hate the RAF, we were encouraged to hate the Navy, we were encouraged to hate other units within the British Army. And that made us feel very special, because looking down on these other people made us feel that we were part of a special gang. But also, if you think about it, if you can encourage young soldiers to hate the very society that they're from, we used to hate civvies, what are they going to think of civilian populations which they are then parachuted into, whether that be Iraq, Afghanistan or Northern Ireland?
But we know we've got this Chilcot inquiry, whether it's a whitewash or not. How do you think the reverberations of Iraq combine with this campaign?
I think that after the Iraq War, the initial invasion and the start of that occupation, the British military got scared. And we can see this from their own internal documents, that they are concerned that one of their primary enemies is actually public opinion. One of the things that will stop them operating in the future is public opinion. So what we've seen since 2006 is a concerted effort through community engagement teams which carry out recruitment through Armed Forces Day to try and capture the imagination of our society back into the military mindset. And obviously Chilcot is a negative for the military, but I think the way the military will spin it is they'll spin it as if it was a purely political decision. Even though, actually at the time, most British officers, most British generals and most British soldiers were dying to go to Iraq and invade that country.
You don't think Angela Eagle, who's trying to become leader of the Labour Party, who did support the war in Iraq and Libya, would be a good leader of the Labour Party? I mean, your organisation, Veterans for Peace, what's their feeling about, in terms of war and peace, who should lead the Labour Party and the Tory Party?
We will oppose every and any politician and political party that advocates for war, whether that be Labour, Tory. We're not partisan in terms of politics. However, taking my Veterans for Peace hat off and looking at what's happening with Brexit and Corbyn, the Labour Party, the Labour Party backed the wrong side in the Scottish Indie ref, and they paid for that at the ballot box. They were wiped out in Scotland. I firmly believe that Labour has backed the wrong side in this Brexit referendum. They backed metropolitan England over working class and rural England, and they will pay at the ballot box again. I think the only chance the Labour Party have got is if Corbyn remains stubborn, ignores what the Parliamentary Labour Party is saying, because I genuinely believe that, that the Labour Party members, of which I'm not one, will vote for Corbyn.
Okay,
and just to finish, I think that Labour's only chance now is for a Corbyn leadership that actually accepts Brexit and says, OK, we are out of the EU, how can we make this the least harsh for working people? So we accept the Brexit result and now we try and make it better for people, and I think that's the only chance that Labour have got.
Ben Griffin, thank you.